welcome you all to our first Leaders, Innovators and Disruptors event for 2021. Now, before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge country. And because we're all zooming in from various parts of Australia and indeed the world perhaps, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the lands on which we are meeting today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And here at Macquarie University, we sit on the land of the Watamatagal clan of the Darug Nation. So I pay my personal respects to elders past, present and emerging. And to everyone that's joined us, I would also like to invite you to share the traditional landowners of this place that you are joining us from today in the chat box. It's always fascinating to see the diverse audience that we have with us at these events, and it's always appropriate to acknowledge the traditional custodians of these lands. So please share away. If I can, I'll just bring up the chat box so I can actually see. There we go. It's starting to come in. Excellent. From Woolloomooloo, welcome. From the Cancer Council. But as I said, I'm absolutely thrilled to be hosting this event today. This event is being brought to you in collaboration with the MQ alumni team at Macquarie University, led by Susan Mills. And you'll hear from Susan towards the end of today's presentation, because it's particularly fitting that they join us today because our guest speaker is an alumni of Macquarie University and has won the Rising Star Award for his work in co-founding Humanitix. So I can't wait to dive into this conversation. So a little bit about our guest speaker, Josh, who's joining right beside me here. Hi, Josh.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so I'm sure Josh will introduce himself in various parts of this presentation, but on screen now is just a little synopsis of Josh and what he's done with Humanitix. But Josh, we've heard, does not like speaking for an hour in front of an audience, and he much prefers an interactive conversation. And that's exactly what we're going to have today. And on that note, we would love you to submit any questions that you'd like to ask Josh via the chat, or if you're brave enough, ask your question live by coming off mute. We'll make sure that there's points in this conversation where we stop and see if there's any questions from the audience. So I think that sounds like a plan, and we will just dive into it here with some of the questions that I've prepared for Josh. And I hope that it makes for a very interesting discussion. I'm sure that we'll all leave really inspired at the end of this few minutes or so. Okay, Josh, well, thanks again for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on, and it's certainly a big, it's a great event to kick off 2021. And I think as humans, we're all interested in someone else's journey, from where they started to where they got to today. So let's go back a few years to when you graduated from Macquarie University with your Bachelor of Applied Science and Bachelor of Commerce in 2011. And where was life taking you at that point? And I guess, when did the idea for Humanitix start to emerge for you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, just to correct, it was applied finance and comm accounting, not nearly as interesting as science. But yeah, so back in 2010, 2011, I was graduating. I went with my best friend and co-founder Adam McCurdy to Sri Lanka for 3 months, and that was 6 months before I graduated. And it was actually 2009, 2010, that summer that we left. And 8 months earlier, the civil war that had waged there for about 30 years had finally finished. And so the country was opening up more and more to tourism. And we took our surfboards, we jumped across, and we had one of the most life-changing trips of our lives. And it was there actually that the seed for Humanitix was planted. We both were coming back. Adam was going into management consulting. I was going to work at a hedge fund here in Sydney in the investment team, that we were both talking about what we really wanted to do with our lives, and neither of them were those answers that we had there and then. But we recognized it would be really useful to go into industry, get experience, learn, save up some money so that at some point we could team up and create the organization that we wanted to actually do with our lives. And one of the biggest influences of mine was a guy, Professor Muhammad Yunus. He was actually an economics professor who was in Bangladesh in the 1970s and 80s, and he's the grandfather of microfinance. He ended up winning a Nobel Peace Prize for coming up with the concept of microfinance, which has since brought millions of women out of poverty. And I thought that's the coolest idea, flipping a traditional banking industry, capitalist industry on its head to still use the principles, but for good, and for like incredible good. And so me and Adam were both pretty inspired by that, and we didn't have any good ideas at the time, but we said at some point down the track, we'll have an idea maybe, and we'll team up and operate as one organization, one person. And since then, Adam and I have lived together, we've traveled together, everything short of marriage, but we sang a speech at his wedding later this year. And yeah, that's kind of where I was graduating. I was about to go work in this hedge fund, but excited to learn there, but not excited to be there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I've heard many times before, and it's actually relevant to me too, that travel to these places, and it doesn't necessarily need to be overseas, it can be in the backyard. You just have to get out and see things, and it can change the course of your life, because you're there experiencing things that you're not so fond of, and you think, why is it this way, and can I do something to help? I've certainly had those questions. I just haven't had that solution that you've found with Humanitix. And as I said, it's just so inspiring that you're doing, you're making incredible impact and doing such good in the world, and including in our backyard in Australia. For everyone who doesn't know, I'm sure Josh will explain a little bit more about the Humanitix, but I know that I heard of Humanitix a couple of years ago, maybe actually probably only 18 months ago, and I made the immediate switch to do my business via Humanitix, because it's almost a no-brainer. Why would you use another ticketing platform when Humanitix mission is to redirect 100% of the profits from booking fees to projects that address education gaps affecting the most disadvantaged in our backyard and indeed overseas. So as I said, it's almost a no-brainer, which is probably why Humanitix has experienced a doubling of size every 6 months. Is that true, Josh?
Yeah, until COVID hit, but I'm happy to say we're back at peak volumes and that trend's back. But for about 9 or 12 months there, we were on our knees. But as every event ticketing platform around the world was. But, it's been definitely the fastest growing ticketing platform in Australasia, have been for some time, and the only charity disrupting the industry, which is exciting.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about how you navigated COVID, given the massive impact that it had on your business.
Yeah, it was really hard. I was in the States in March last year with my co-founder Adam. We were exploring how we might enter the US market, and we had to fly back halfway through the month in emergency. We were on the first plane that had to do isolation for 2 weeks and lockdown. So our team, like overnight, our revenue went from doubling every 6 months and peak records, complete momentum, to negative in April, and that was because we didn't just lose our revenue, but we made a decision as an organization that we would wear the pain with our event organizers. We'd refund all our fees on events that didn't get to go ahead. And a lot of ticketing platforms don't do that, which is wrong. And so, it was a real crazy moment. Our team didn't know, would they have job security? And excitingly, we didn't let go any of the core team. In fact, we're, I think, the only ticketing platform I know of that had account managers and customer service not drop the ball at all through COVID. And so we actually got more 5-star reviews than ever through that period. And we took a lot of market share, and that's showing now. So even though the market's still down at an industry level, we're at peak levels, and all of that's market share growth. The events market is bigger than it was this time last year. Yeah. And so it was really hard. We lost a lot of money. Impact was significantly diminished the last 12 months. I mean, we had a really healthy amount going into our projects, and that just got decimated, which is sad. But yeah, we survived. We came out really strong, and excitingly, like, the team's growing again, and our impact's growing again.
Congratulations. That's excellent. And it goes to show how some companies can come out stronger the other side of such a setback. So well done to you all, and I'm pleased to know that you're at peak volume again. But just in those early stages, when you were doubling in size every 6 months, our audience here typically includes some startup founders who are going through the scaling process themselves. And it might sound like a dream to get to that point, but in fact, sometimes it can be a nightmare, and it's where some businesses fall over. Can you go back to that point of where you were truly, growing at such an incredible rate, and just that business load that came falling down on you and Adam's heads, I suspect, and how you handled that process?
Yeah. So all these problems are problems people have solved before. So I think, our attitude was always, let's try and learn from the best. And so that's not just your competitors, but it's people in completely different industries, but are really good at whatever problem you're trying to solve. And so we're very fortunate that our biggest supporter and funder is Atlassian through their foundation, but their foundation is intrinsically tied to what the staff are doing in the business as well. And so that's the best tech company in Australia, hands down, in my view. And they have some of the smartest people in the country working there. And we've always had, since they started supporting us in 2018, which is, it really started to take off, given us almost unrestricted access to their staff to ask advice, to sound check our strategy against. And that's everything from what payment gateway to use, to how we should host our infrastructure, to how we should market Humanitix. And so we've been incredibly fortunate to have them as almost a big brother to ask these questions of, and not big brother in the scary sense, probably the wrong analogy, big sister. Yeah, that's helped a lot. But the other thing that's helped a lot is that we've always prioritized software development. And before me and Adam drew a salary, we'd hired our CTO and we were paying him, because everyone loves what our mission is. They love that we've got this value proposition where it costs nothing extra, but you can, at no extra cost, have your booking fees going to a great cause. But if the tech's not world class, I'm sorry, I've got a business to run here and I need to sell as many tickets as I can. Cute idea, but I can't afford you. And so we've always put tech first and recognize that if we don't do that, we won't have an impact at scale. And so that's kind of been the way we've operated from day one. So yeah, we've had our challenges, and not to say, you can have the best advice in the world, it's still bloody tough and you're still going to run into issues, but just trying to be cognizant of the fact that we've never done this before. So be idiots not to look around us.
Yeah. No, that sounds like you've made all the right moves, and I guess you're constantly learning about how to tackle new challenges. How big is your team now?
Yeah, so full-time staff in Australia and New Zealand, I think 23 now. We just hired a few more. And then we've got boards in both countries, advisory committees, and a couple of contractors. But yeah, it's a pretty lean team.
Yeah, lean but mighty. We're the same here at the Incubator. We like that. I heard that you're opening an office in North America. Is that right?
It depends which day you ask. So we were going to be doing that last year, then COVID hit. We still intend to at some point. Obviously, right now with travel restrictions and the world the way it is, it's a watch and brief. So we've been talking to the state of Colorado and a few other states about what it might look like if we move over there. There's a whole bunch of things we're solving. We are live in the US, so you can actually use our platform in US dollars, even Fijian currency. So we're now truly international, not just Australia, New Zealand. But we don't have a team on the ground there yet, and I can't tell you exactly when we will. But our intention for sure is to go and replicate what we've done here over there.
Absolutely. Yep, it's always good to have things in the pipeline, and I imagine COVID's really screwed up quite a few people's plans in respect of what they had lined up in the next couple of months. Josh, you talked.
Actually, there's a story.
Yeah.
So Atlassian, when COVID hit, So just before COVID hit, me and Adam were in America planning. Luckily, we hadn't deployed any capital. But at that point, Atlassian had said, how much are you needing in funding to go into the US? And we guesstimate it's this much. And they said, okay, we're in for a third and we'll help you raise the balance. So the best partner we've got, because we hit our the targets they set for us in Australia, and they back us. COVID hit, we had them fly back. We're dealing with the disaster that's hitting us there and then. And unsolicited, we get an email from some of the senior staff at Atlassian saying, by the way, here's some emergency capital to help you deal with the situation. And just so you know, on North American expansion, we're still behind you for what we've committed to, and you tell us when it makes sense to go. Wow. So like that made last year a lot successful and a lot easier. And that's the type of culture they've got within their foundation. It's truly remarkable. So it still sucked last year, but like that took a lot of the sting out of like the stress we were going through. So yeah,
that is remarkable.
Feel spoiled.
Yeah, well, you're lucky to. I mean, partnerships are not. There's a mutual benefit to all partnerships, and I know that Atlassian would be benefiting from having Humanitix within its network too. That's how partnerships work. But I was going to ask a little bit more about this relationship that you have with Atlassian. I think everyone knows Atlassian, at least in Australia. I also agree. The most incredible story. Again, like you and Adam, two kind of best mates from uni, getting together and starting this, software company, and suddenly making it to the such a success that it's just been it's incredible, really. But I was reading in preparation for our interview that Atlassian have a Pledge 1% global movement, and you were inspired and you joined up for that. Can you, is this the reason that they're so involved with Humanitix as part of this Pledge 1%? Could you explain a little bit about that initiative and how it works with your relationship with Atlassian, and how you implement that within your own business?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I'll step back and explain Pledge 1%, and then I'll talk about us with it. So Pledge 1% is an awesome movement and organization that Scott and Mike from Atlassian pioneered with, I think, the founder of Salesforce. I might be mixing it up, but effectively it was, as founders, they said, everyone starts at day zero with zero. We don't have anything to give, but we're going to make a pledge that at some point on our journey, when we can afford to and it makes sense, we're going to give 1% of our profit, 1% of our time, 1% of our equity to non-for-profits around the world to make a major difference. And if every business around the world did that, that amount of money is insane. It's more than the whole pool of philanthropy in the world right now. And it's a very easy pledge to make. And if you do it from day one, you're going to actually do it. And so they, I think, were one of the first companies to have that in their IPO. They're also one of the first companies to have bullshit written into the IPO documentation. So they've done a few firsts. But when they listed on the NASDAQ, that was part of the deal. 1% of our product, 1% of our time. And if you set that from day one, all the VCs and private equity firms that come in and then the public markets, they're buying into that. And it's very hard to do that once you've listed, to turn around to your shareholders and say, hey, 1% of your equity we're giving to XYZ charity. So that's what the Pledge 1% movement's about. It's all about inspiring entrepreneurs to do that pledge and do it early. Because ultimately, if you're successful and you have $1 billion company, you can afford it. And it's just the stakeholders you've brought along the ride. The other element of it is it's really good for the team culture. So Atlassian, all their staff get 5 days a year to volunteer. And that can be often just as, if not more, impactful than the money. And I talked about the advisory that they work with us. And so, some of the advice they've given us is worth its pound in flesh. And so that's Pledge 1%. It's, global, very cool network. I think you don't do it for business reasons, but it actually is good for your business. And it's a great network to be a part of. So I encourage anyone listening who's starting something out to make the pledge and join the movement. So how do we get involved? Well, for us, it's we're Pledge 1% extremists because we're Pledge 100%. So, we didn't have to change anything when we joined. All of our profits go into our education programs. We are a registered charity and a tech platform. So it's this weird thing that, for obvious reasons, not everyone's going to do. But so, it was we've joined and it's been great. When I was over in America, we went to Pledge 1%'s headquarters and they gave us some great introductions into other tech companies because it's a network. But Atlassian, they see us as every event that runs through us on our normal fee structure, we turn it into a pledge 1% event because our fees are roughly 5%. Then all our profits going to charity equate to that on the total ticket price, which isn't our money. And so it's kind of this cool thing that we're turning every event in the world into a pledge 1% event at no extra cost to the event organizer. Yeah, that's kind of how it works. Yeah. It's about.
Yeah, that's not just cool. That is very, very cool. And it's awesome that this started by, Atlassian here in Sydney. And it's just great to hear how they are partnering up with so many organizations and bringing so much valuable advice and funding in your case. And, like you said, easing the load and the pressures that exist in everyday business, not to mention the year that was and still is COVID. So yeah, that's awesome. So we have got a question from the crowd, but I might just ask one more question before we go to that, just to wrap up the kind of philanthropy part of what you do, although questions are welcome on that. So just tell us, I'm interested to know about some of the projects that Humanitix has funded, perhaps one overseas example and another one in Australia?
Yeah, sure. So in Australia, we're focused at the moment predominantly on Indigenous education. Obviously, I don't need to tell you, but it's the most disadvantaged cohort in Australia, and sadly on pretty much every metric as well. So we partner with a group up in Queensland, which are Indigenous run, but they're national in terms of their operations. We're providing education to regionally disadvantaged Indigenous students who have a lot of potential, but in their area don't have access to quality education. And so we provide scholarships and that support structure around them to enable them to go on and finish school, get into a medical degree or a nursing degree or whatever it is they want to go on. And the whole vision of that organisation that we partner with there is to create Indigenous leaders of the future to have a voice in Australian affairs. So it's a really cool organisation, and we go deeper than just funding them. For example, over this summer, we had our first scholar finish year 12. He's going to do a commerce degree next year. But in the interim, he did a paid internship with us where we taught him all about tech and sales because, there's barely any Indigenous representation in the tech industry, for example, and it's now arguably the most important industry. And so we're trying to create pathways of employment and also just, do that. So that was a trial and it went really well. And now I've got a relationship with a student who's going to be in Sydney. He's moving to Sydney now, has just moved to Sydney. And we'll try it with a few more students next year and see what we can learn from that and scale it up. But that's predominantly what we do in Australia, but we may be adding more stuff that we do in Australia over the next 12 months, watch that space. And then globally, we focus on girls' education in low-income countries, areas like India, Nepal, parts of sub-Saharan Africa. And that's in partnership with an organization called Room to Read. And that's providing literacy and life skills to young girls who, otherwise wouldn't be getting it in parts of the world where girls aren't going to school or getting married underage or all sorts of different issues. Excitingly, in some parts of the world where that was an issue, it's actually starting, now in India, for example, young girls are actually going to school more than young boys. So, compared to 30 years ago, there's been massive progress on that, but still sadly, a lot of parts of the world where it's not even close. So that's what we focus on. And our event organizers at no extra cost to them just allocate where our profits go to one of those projects.
Yeah, that's amazing. Have you been on the ground to any of those overseas sites to see your work in?
We're going to, but we will as soon as we can again. But another cool thing actually worth mentioning, just because at the very start you mentioned Cancer Council during the call. Yeah. So we work with thousands of charities around Australia, and they can all use our platform at what's seen as our, we just effectively cover the credit card fees and our internal costs. We don't make a margin that goes into our education projects. We treat them as the cause. So Cancer Council New South Wales, I think their biggest event is the Seven Bridges Walk. We did that with them in late 2019. It was an awesome success. And so, we work with thousands of charities around the country and save them on fees that would have otherwise gone to whatever registration platform they would have used.
Yeah. As I said at the beginning of this conversation, it's a no-brainer to use Humanitix. I think it's just that people don't know if they're using other platforms. Anyway, that's just my personal opinion. All right, we might jump to a few questions from the audience now. Martin Mulcair would like to ask a question of you, Josh. Martin, if you'd like to come off mute.
Sure, thanks, Ainsley. And Josh, thank you very much for your experience and wisdom that you're sharing today. I had the pleasure of working with Adam on the growth project with a room of charity leaders. I'm interested in your advice, guidance to charity leaders who may be contemplating transitioning from a charity structure to a social enterprise structure. What's your guidance, Josh?
Yeah, hi, Martin. I'll tell Adam you say good day after this. Yeah, he raved about the growth project. So, I mean, yeah, it's interesting. Like, me and Adam came into the charity sector, and Humanitix is a charity completely green on the sector because we'd always worked in the for-profit industry. And we recognize that in the social enterprise sector, it's very hard to straddle both worlds. People typically, and there's some great exceptions, like Ronnie Khan, I'd say, is a great exception, but not many people can be great at operating a domestic violence shelter and great at making money in business. They're often a very different type of person. So that's a big challenge that a charity needs to ask itself is, are we better off doing this in-house, or should we just partner and kind of leave them as different entities? But once they've answered that question, I'd say another thing I'd advise would be, often in the social enterprise sector, there's not as strong a commercial lens. So for example, if you want to make a social enterprise cafe where the profits fund the good work you're doing, or something along those lines, well, most for-profit cafes don't make much money. It's not a profitable industry, high foreclosure rates every year, low barriers to entry. You might create a social enterprise cafe to provide employment to disadvantaged people, which is a different point. But if it's trying to disrupt the profits of it, then go after an industry that's highly profitable. That's why I went after ticketing. It's been rorting people for a long time, excessive fees, costs haven't come down in tech they should over time, no longer get a hard copy ticket. Like, there was all these commercial reasons why we thought it was right for disruption, and then we applied the charity lens to it, as opposed to the other way around, which is intuitive, like, we're a domestic violence shelter, why don't we do something that's relevant to that as our social business? But hold on a minute, you maybe don't want to think about it that way. Like, ticketing has very little to do with education traditionally. So, but that's worked really well because we didn't look at it from that lens. So that would be my advice, but get it right, it's awesome. I mean, there's a few great ones in Australia, like Thank You, who do the water and the soap. They just had their best record year. They were the opposite to us. COVID was great for them, and all power to them. Who Gives a Crap is another one. They're not quite the same as us. Half their profits go to great projects. Still a massive fan. Awesome what they're doing. Also had a record year. Yeah.
Thank you. Very insightful. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Martin. We actually have a startup here, the Benevolence Financial Group, who are working with us at the Incubator. I don't know if Sam or Michelle are on this call. I think they were meant to be. But they're also, really disrupting the way that mortgage brokers go about their business, and they direct part of the commissions that banks give to mortgage brokers into all this social impact work, and they partner with, do we have Sam or Michelle on the line? Anyway.
I don't think so, Ainsley. I haven't noticed them appear.
Okay, well, I was just thinking, because you mentioned thank you.
I can go tap him on the shoulder.
Yeah, they must be in a meeting. You just mentioned thank you, Josh, and it's funny how business ideas emerge, because these guys are just newly graduated students. They met at a MQ Incubator scholarship overseas, and they heard from Thank You Group, and he was working in a bank at the time, and he said, I can really, banks earn millions of dollars, mortgage brokers do pretty well too. I can, transition some of those commissioning fees and I divert them for good. And that's exactly what they're doing. I must say, it's really inspiring to see their growth and their determination to really disrupt that mortgage broking industry and get some new clients along the way and promote all these great causes. So that's just a little bit of an inside story from the.
We're anecdotally, like every month or two, we get someone reach out to us to saying, "Hey, I want to do telecoms. What you're doing, like,
Yeah.
It's great. It's really inspiring. It's nice to, we're not as far down the journey as Thank You, but see that effect as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important that people need to be transparent. Like, Who Gives a Crap is great. They're transparent. We give half our profits to our projects, and that's how we sustainably do this. They've recently had 2 competitors come in that give something to a cause, but they don't disclose what. And so they kind of, you don't know if they're greenwashing or what's going on. And then we've got to, as consumers, be really diligent and say, hey, if you're not transparent about what you're doing, stop it, because you're probably McDonald's slapping some, we just don't know. If you're not transparent, it destroys the whole industry for the consumer's perspective.
That's really important. That's really
important. Event organizers not just what our impact is as a group, but what the dollar value is from their event. So that's incredibly important in my view.
Yeah, that's great advice, Josh. Okay, we have another question here from Amelia. Do you have plans to expand the offering to include a bespoke online webinar live streaming service, or to continue to integrate with market vendors?
Yeah, great question. So in April last year, we rolled out our virtual events hub, which allows you to, manage your event through the Humanitix system, but integrate with Zoom, Teams, Hangouts, whatever you're using. And within that, it's got quite a lot of smarts. So like, for example, you can distribute your Zoom links when people register, but it's security tokenized so that no one else can access with that link. If they share it, it can only be used once. So there's some really good stuff around there that's made it, great for our clients to run online events. Our view is that once COVID's resolved, obviously there's going to be a lot more online events than there were before, but we're not going to completely pivot our strategy. Some people are coming out in mid last year saying it's changed forever. There may never be in-person events again. It's like, no, we've already seen that's not the case. In fact, we had the advantage of being in New Zealand where they sorted it out even better than Australia. And we had record volumes in July, August, because there was a pent-up demand for in-person events. As convenient as Zoom is, it's not the same, especially when it's a cultural event like a music show or something like that. So yeah, we'll continue to add to what we're doing there, but we're not going to become a pure play online events platform.
Yep, that makes sense to me. And I can certainly voice how much I missed those in-person events and how tiring Zoom can become, when you're on it all the time. All right, and just one question before we dive back into some of the discussion that we had planned. There's a few people asking about how on earth did you get these business contacts at Atlassian, and how did you go about establishing that relationship? Because I suspect they might want to do the same.
Yeah, sure. So it was funny. It was 2018. Me and Adam had been doing this for about 3 years, and for the first 2 years we had to self-fund it. So we'd moved back to our parents' place. We were, it was tough times, and there's no equity, so there's not going to be some handsome payoff down the track. And then we bounced around a few corporate foundations trying to show them that we'd had proof of concept. Look, we've sold a few $1 million in tickets. We've had this impact. This works. Let's scale it up. And we always got knocked back because it never fitted the mandate of these corporate foundations, because they were all kind of, we do this, and sorry, we hadn't imagined what you're doing here before, so it doesn't fit our mandate. Computer says no. And we're like, understand why you have a mandate, but you've killed your ability to think outside the box. Luckily, Atlassian are different. But we actually went in there initially. They had what are called charity mixes, which I think after COVID resolves, they'll probably still do again, where 20 charities can come in, you get up for a minute, pitch your tech problems, or you're just, they don't even have to be tech problems, they can be whatever problems you've got. Atlassian staff, because they all get 5 days a year, can volunteer, and it can be to paint a wall in your shelter, or it can be to help you with your code or your infrastructure. So we went in there genuinely just wanting their staff to help us. We're like, cool, we can tap into MIT engineers for free and get a sense check on what we're doing here. And it was through that and some of their staff volunteering with us that we built a relationship with the foundation. And because we're a true technology charity, we're arguably one of the most engaging charities for their staff to actually use their skills. And so it organically started playing out that way. They were helping us design ticketing pages, their UX, UI designers were volunteering with us. And a traditional charity would go in there and be like, we need help. We want to put a donations widget on our website. We were going in there with complex problems for seeding maps that required the most relevant tech stack that real things you can sink your teeth into as a problem solver. And so we had that advantage. And then through that, they saw what we were doing, and we were like, look, we pitched them and we said, hey, we want to do this. We're running into this problem that we can't access capital as a charity. And they're like, look, our foundation's mandate's a bit different to what you're doing, but this is awesome. We see the scalability, we get it. Let us do due diligence, and if it makes sense, we'll we'll change our mandate, because our mandate was there to maximize social impact. It would be very perverse if it got in the way of maximizing social impact. And I wish more foundations felt that way. But I get why the structures that they are the way they are. Anyway, so that's how we got in with Atlassian. The foundation has a pretty strict mandate around education, which we fit. But yeah, if you can engage with them genuinely on what their staff can offer, that's a big focus for their foundations. A third of their focus is how do we get our staff helping the world. So that's my advice.
Well, there you go, everyone. Now you know how you crack Atlassian. What do you think about those corporations that you found that you were just hitting the brick wall? Do you think that that's going to change, or do you think that they're going to, open their eyes to that wider picture at some point, or what's your thoughts?
I don't know. I feel like it's very unique for us as a charity. Like if you're a for-profit, there's a whole world of VC that are looking for the next idea. If you're a charity, there's not a whole world of people looking for the next experimental, unproven idea. And, in foundations, typically, there aren't people with the skill sets to analyze social enterprises, particularly tech platforms, return on capital. They're used to looking at traditional charities where they're doing impact measurement work, understanding their programs, looking at the governance. And so I don't think it will change for us. We're going to need, our partners from a funding perspective are going to be either tech foundations or individual philanthropists who have made their money in business or tech, who can understand the scalability, the strategy, as well as the impact side of it. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Hopefully, if we shoot the lights out and we don't stuff it up over the next 10 years, you might start to see it change, because if we can turn a few $1 million from Atlassian into hundreds of millions of dollars for Indigenous education and the other things we do, then other foundations will be like, that's better than anything else we've seen. We need to start thinking like that. But that's it's just a bit of extra pressure for our team. And the guys at Thank You and the other people pioneering.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, there's a few questions that relate to the startup scene, but I'm going to ask you a question about that first, because here at the Macquarie Incubator, we really celebrate failure, because we know that it's almost an inevitable part of anyone's startup journey. So we always like to ask our guest speakers about their greatest failures and what have those failures taught you along the way?
Yeah, I mean, our biggest failure was definitely last year. Like from a social enterprise perspective, our revenue went negative. We couldn't see a way out. Like, we didn't know if this was going to be like this for 3 years, 6 months, 1 month. I mean, no one knew in April or March. And, we had to make a really tough decision. Like, we're not that, we were very fragile as an emerging disruptor in this industry. And so we sat down and we pulled all our staff and we said, we've got this runway if we don't cut jobs. We've got this runway if we cut jobs. Our inclination is for at least the next 9 months to not cut jobs, and we think all our competitors are going to fire left, right, and center internally, and they did. Our biggest competitor, Eventbrite, let go of, I think, 50% of their staff, or close to that, globally. Wow. And that meant that you, as an event organizer, when you're in April having to navigate the toughest time you've ever gone through, and you want to pick up the phone and speak to your ticketing platform to work out how you do this, or how you refund these things, or what the deal is going to be, there was no one to talk to. But at Humanitix there was. And so we said, we're going to take it on the chin. We can sustain it for 6 to 9 months. If in 6 to 9 months we can't see a path out of this, we'll have to go to plan B. So we kind of sat down and felt like we were failing, because we were losing so much money every month. Our impact to our projects was negligible because we were losing money. And it was really just, for our sales team, like salespeople, they jive off winning. And we weren't just losing, we were going backwards. And so it was horrible, but it really set us up nicely. And it was, in hindsight, the right response to that type of failure. And yeah, I'd say that's obviously front of mind because it's so recent and it's still kind of happening. But yeah, that's kind of just the way we responded to it, putting our clients first, recognizing that there will be a path out, and if you take a medium to long-term view, it was the best thing for our social enterprise, like taking a lot of market share because of that strategy. But it was also the right strategy, and it's consistent with our values. So I think, if you can take a medium, we had the luxury of being able to take a medium-term perspective, couple of our competitors have gone bust. They don't have the balance sheets to play that card. But yeah, yeah, it's probably our best lesson.
Yeah, no, it's always those in hindsight learnings that I think have the greatest impact of people and give people hope at times when they just want to throw it all in and, you know, give up. Sometimes you do have that luxury of giving yourself a little bit more time and taking those risks, that it can really, it can pay off in the longer run. There's a question here about what your thoughts of the startup scene in Australia are. I'm just trying to scroll back to find it. But what do you think of the startup scene in Sydney and Australia? And where have you found most support? And what do you recommend to new startups? There's a few questions in that.
Yeah. Oh, look, I can only talk from our lens, and we're quite a unique beast. But you know, before that, I worked in a hedge fund for 7 years. So I weren't doing VC stuff, but I think it's by far the best it's ever been. There was so much greed out there with the central banks pushing interest rates to pretty much 0%, and you know, everyone's kind of caught on to tech's where the money's at. So if you've got an idea now, and I don't think it could be better timed in terms of access to capital. And if you're sitting there with an idea saying I can't get funding for XYZ reason, well, it's not because the markets aren't there. I'm sorry to break it, but I'm not saying it's easy, but like there's so many VC funds spinning up. There's so much money around right now. I can't conceive how it's going to get better than this environment, which is incredibly encouraging. So, you know, anyone out there with an idea, like now's the time to swing for the fences. And, you know, we've had a number of successes now in Australia, Canva, Atlassian, just to name a few. So the road's been paved. We've got good VC firms in Australia with good talent now. And internationally, borders have disappeared. So you can pitch to VC funds in the States. I would say outside of VC world, like, you know, we were in the West Coast in March last year, and culturally, their response to crazy ideas is way warmer and more excitable and more open-minded than we've seen in Australia or the East Coast of America. So that was interesting. East Coast, like New York, it was more like Sydney. From that lens of wanting to see the vision of what you're creating and thinking long term, where in Sydney and East Coast it seemed to be more short term. How can I get out of this in 5 years and 10 times my money? Again, we're a charity, so like we're not part of that conversation, but we're also, all the philanthropists are from that world in our space. So yeah, we still somehow cross over.
Yeah. So now's the time. Give it a go.
Gotta be. Money's. I just want to cry out all the poor people from ever buying a home.
Yes.
I think it's madness and unethical, but just throwing that out there.
Yeah, fair enough too.
They just waived responsible lending. So like, you can't afford a home, let's give you a loan. Like, yeah, that's ethical.
I think you've
Sorry, I'm going
about that. Just not LinkedIn if anyone's interested.
You did say we'd talk about yeah, it's insane. We'll see what happens in the long run.
Yeah. Coming back to your co-founder, Adam, you said you were best friends and you're all but married. How important is it for startups to find, you know, that right co-founder? And how do you and Adam complement one another?
Yeah. For me, like I would have failed a million times if it wasn't for my co-founder, and for multiple different reasons. But I think, you know, I made it out like it's really easy just before in terms of startups. I meant relatively easy to 20 years ago if you were trying to come up with an idea, or 10 years ago even. But it's bloody hard. And, you know, often there'll be weeks where you feel like you've made no progress because you just have to pivot again, and you just got a kick in the face because you thought you were onto something, but someone just revealed to you why it's a bad idea. And you turn around to your co-founder who's been doing something else for the last 3 weeks. They've just had a massive win. That really lifts you. And even if they haven't had a massive win, at least you're in it together like that. For me personally, it was the fear of loneliness and the scariness of that kind of was the most likely going to freeze me in my unhappy career path that I wasn't content in. And so having a co-founder, like, yeah, I wouldn't have had the guts to do it if I wasn't doing it with someone else. And then in terms of complementary skills, his background was tech. Mine was finance, so very complementary. I have a few rules that keep us gelled together. I can share the basic two that like I give to everyone, and I think it's not just for a co-founder, it's for a life partner or whatever, all relationships of life. But one is that it's never going to be equal. So it's always, the demands of whatever you're working on as a joint project, whether it be Humanitix or your home or your kids. It's never going to be equal in terms of the load that you take with your different roles. And so if the tech platform's having issues, Adam's up till 4 a.m. trying to solve it. I might take other things off his plate so he can focus on that, but I'm probably going to go to bed at normal time because there's not much more I can do. And vice versa if it's an area of my respect. And if you can be cognizant of that from day one, then there won't be animosity when one of you feels like for a month you've been killing yourself and the other one's not. The other is always raise it early. So Ainsley, you've been grabbing my pen to sign stuff for the last month. You've taken 4 of my pens. You never return them, and I see you chewing them. It really pisses me off. And I've noticed that for 2 months now. Well, you turn around to me and be like, Josh, if you've been noticing for that for 2 months, you should have raised it on day one, because now it's become an issue. And it's actually your fault for not raising it early. And it doesn't matter how petty it is. You got to raise it early, and that prevents all fights. Like, you do that and you don't have a blow up. And so it's 5 years in, had our moments of a lot of stress, never had a fight. And so, always raise it early. And I think that's the most important one. And sorry, just for everyone on the audience, Ainsley's never stolen my pen. I made it up.
I'm laughing because I chew my pens and I do steal people's pens. So it's particularly relevant. And I do need to personally take on that that advice, because as you say, it applies to the life partners too. And I think I got to get out of I think I got to get out of my head that everything's equal. Everything is not equal, and you're never going to make it be. So they're excellent lessons, Josh. Thanks for sharing. Now, I know we have still a few more questions in the chat, but I know for a fact that there's quite a lot of students joining us today. Some have just graduated from high school and started their first year at university, and Prashan, Josh's teacher, who you will hear from shortly, he suggested a question to inspire students. So I want to ask you that, Josh. How can current students ensure that the knowledge they learn in their degrees can challenge traditional discipline boundaries to use that knowledge they have in an to give out-of-the-box impact?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there isn't a answer. The things I'd recommend in terms of how you can increase your chances of finding that sweet spot and coming up with an idea that's in some form revolutionary would be to expose yourself to as much as you can, and there's no better time than at university. Speak to anyone who starts their career, and you always start from the bottom, and you're to some extent pinch and hold, doing what you need to do to get to the next stage. Much harder to be creative in that environment, because you're getting drummed 40 hours a week, maybe more, into doing the same thing. Where at university, that doesn't exist. Everything's always in a state of change. That's honestly a more accurate reflection of the world in many ways. Things are always changing. And so if you're lucky enough to be in a position to travel, like I lived at home, and when I studied at Macquarie, and I was 15 minutes down the road, I was very lucky. I didn't buy a car till I was 26 and graduated, because all my money that I could save at my cafe job on the weekend just went to traveling. And that's a great education that can complement, and you'll see a lot of different ideas, and will make you dream in different ways. Another thing is to get experience that's relevant when you're at university. The worst thing ever is to finish a degree in something that you've spent 5 years studying, having no idea what it looks like to work in that industry, and discovering you hate it after 1 year. It's not a smart way to do it. And so it amazes me that not enough students go and knock on doors and say, I'll work for free for a month, 2 days a week. And if you like, and if I work out and I'm adding value, can you please pay me $20 an hour? If not, at least that's like a great way to work out quickly, is this something I want to do? And you also have that creative young naivety, which will make you think outside the box, where it's very hard 20, 30 years into doing the same thing to have that same naive creativity that's actually an asset you don't want to lose. So yeah, that's my advice there. And we read widely. Don't just do the textbooks that are given to you on your discipline. If I had not read Banker to the Poor by Muhammad Yunus, I never would have come to an idea like Humanitix. That whole book inspired me in ways you can flip capitalism for good. It was awesome. And fiction, non-fiction, don't pigeon yourself in your discipline.
Yeah, fantastic advice, Josh. Hope all students feel inspired, and thank you all for joining us today. That's great. Now, we've got time for one more question, and I want to end on a really uplifting note. And I want to ask you, Josh, what's your best advice for anyone out there considering starting a social impact enterprise? And specifically, what advice would you give them in terms of trying to change customer mindsets and perceptions of a social enterprise?
Yeah, interesting. My best advice for all entrepreneurs, irrespective of whether it's a social enterprise or not, is I think the common mistake, and this isn't my wisdom, this is like well-known VC wisdom, is you got to iterate and test cheaply. And the biggest mistake I've seen friends do, who generally never get there to starting their startup, but they're always working on it, is they try to build a Rolls Royce or a Tesla, I guess is what you say now, before they go to market. And like that's terrible, because you're always going to build the wrong thing first iteration. No one gets it right the first time. So you got to test cheaply and test quickly, and just be comfortable with, you're going to, of your first 10 people that you might be able to convince to try your product, it's not going to blow them out of the world. Like, and you're foolish to think you can get your product there before testing it. And sorry, the last bit of the question was, remind me, sorry, I lost myself.
Yeah, how do you, about changing customer mindsets and perceptions of a social enterprise?
Oh yeah, I think we all as a sector need to be careful that you can't sell on a charitable element. Like, you have to be the best product at the best price, and you happen to be making a better place. And that's another reason why we went after ticketing. Like, that's hard as a social enterprise. If you sell shirts as a social enterprise where they're not made in sweatshops, then you're paying higher labor rates, and there is a natural ethical premium in that product. So that's going to be very hard. But that's why we went after tech. There's no reason why an ethical ticket has to cost more or less than a non-ethical ticket, because of the supply chain. And so we generally save event organizers money when they switch to us. We give them the best ticketing platform in the world. Of course, I'm biased, but we've always had technology first as a philosophy. And so you can create that flywheel where it is a no-brainer. And so if you're creating a social enterprise and you think people are going to buy because you're saving the Amazon rainforest, if you've got a shit product, they're not, or they will, but you'll get the 1% of 1% that are extremely ethical and don't care. And if you want to scale and have the impact that you're dreaming of, you need to be mass market. And sadly, mass market needs the best price, best product, conveniently. And yeah.
Yep, makes total sense in my mind. It's not just good enough to be, diverting to good. You have to be the best at what you're doing too. So yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Josh. I've really enjoyed our chat just now, but you're joined in your offices by two guests from Macquarie, Prashan and Susan. I know that Prashan, Josh's teacher, would like to come in and say a few words, and they've actually got a special presentation to make to Josh. So I might just hand over now. Hi, Prashan.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Yes, Josh was my student back in economics, let's say not so long ago. I told Josh the other day, I remember his voice more than his face. As you can see, he's very good at articulating himself, and the way he presents himself, the tone is very deep. Thought is behind that. So he was definitely a memorable student. And if I had the entire degree program, Josh has now ticked every single concept we've taught him, because he's literally presented that today, and it's amazing for us. We recently pivoted the Bachelor of Commerce at Macquarie in exactly the same way that Josh is envisioned and explained. It's about using business skills to have sustainable development goal impact. So it's not just a business degree for dollars, it's a business degree for achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I'm teaching a unit, the capstone in the BCom, which is exactly what Josh has stated today. He's a case study on iLearn. Our students are going to get this recording as well. There's actually a parallel class happening right now, so they can't actually attend. And I'm from Sri Lanka, as Josh has this affinity to Sri Lanka as well. So many synergies. amazed and honored that I'm learning from Josh. I'm taking these ideas back to the classroom myself. So we always say students are partners and co-creators. So I've just sat there and learned 10 years worth of knowledge, I guess. So yeah, thank you, Josh. An honor to be here.
Thank you. Economics are my favorite subject. So.
Oh, and another connection I just figured during Josh's rant, I also disagree with central bank policy right now. And I'm a lone economist amongst few, and I get hounded by the sector when I say this 0% interest rate is a bad thing. Josh and I are on the same page there. So critical thinkers.
Good to know. We might have a
pass on to.
Yeah, pass it on to Susan Mills, who's the director of our alumni unit. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Ainsley, and hello, everyone. It's lovely to see so many people out there, and I can see quite a number of alumni in the audience and all these wonderful people supporting the university. So thank you so much for coming along. Look, one of the great things in my job is being able to connect with people like Josh. We've been following his journey for the last few years. So he was one of the early alumni that I got introduced to when I started my job. And it was early stages for his business. So I am delighted to say in 2019, just at the end before we all shut down, Josh was identified as the Rising Star for that particular year from Macquarie. And that's a group of under 35 alumni that we look at and identify high performing people that, you know, tick lots of boxes. As Pashan said, you know, he's pretty much ticked every imaginable box at Macquarie. So it's amazing to watch, you know, him and his business, you know, grow and prosper. So it's been wonderful. So I would like to take this opportunity to present Josh the award. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it to the actual event because he went traveling, would you believe, which is consistent with all of his messages here today. And I am so glad that you did get some travel in because, as we know, borders have been cruel since then. So it's been wonderful to, you know, watch this happen. I would encourage people to, I've put the details of Josh's story and other alumni that have won the award. We have a range of different categories, 5 categories running at the moment, which we'll be announcing the next round later in March from the 2020 group. And nominations will be open for 2021. So we look forward to finding more Josh stories out there. I don't know whether we can repeat them, but it's certainly been an honour to listen to their story. Every time I hear Josh's story, I'm more inspired, and it does remind me, you know, the wonderful alumni. And I do have 2 Macquarie alumni here in the room with me, between Pashan and Josh. So it is great to see, you know, the different paths that the university can take people on. So thank you, and it's wonderful to be involved with the Incubator as always.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's an absolute honour. I've only got the fondest of memories of my time at Macquarie, and yeah, this was an awesome surprise. Yeah, put a lot of heat on my brother and sister in the family.
Well, congratulations.
That's right. Everyone needs.
Thank you, dude. I think my sister's tuned in, which is why I wanted.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks for it.
Very, very well deserved. And once again, thank you so much for joining us here today and kickstarting our awesome event series for 2021. So a big thank you to all our audience for being here with us, alumni, students and supporters of Humanitix and Macquarie University. If you'd like to keep in touch with the MQ Incubator and similar events that we run throughout the year, you can sign up to our newsletter. The link is in the chat box. This recording will be available via our YouTube channel, but I do recommend signing up to the newsletter because you'll get the link direct through there. And I guess that wraps it up for today. And just again, thank you, Josh. An inspiring story. I've really enjoyed the chat, and I do hope that we get to meet again soon in the near future.
Thank you, Ainsley. Thanks for having me, and thanks, Susan. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye for now. Bye.